Hello, everyone. This is Dominic coming to you from Los Angeles, California, and it's a real pleasure to be presenting my first live stream of 2021 for the InPulse Creatives channel, their Close Encounters series. I've really enjoyed being a part of this series for probably about half a year now, and I think it's a real wonderful opportunity for artists like myself and others that present to share insights and really a close look at our how we operate at the instrument and some special performances for you. So today, the title of the live stream is called Unexpected Syncopations, and the reason for this title is that we'll be talking primarily about a really important work that was written in the 1990s, Carl Wine's Piano Sonata No.1. If you haven't heard of the composer Carl Wine, that's not necessarily a surprise, although he has developed a rather niche spot in the classical piano repertoire. And he is a composer that was born in Australia. He is still alive today and well. This sonata was written in 1990, and it was commissioned actually by the Sydney Dance Company of Australia. So the first performance of it was actually choreographed and meant to be danced to. So basically in this piece, we see a wonderful combination of classical style with jazz, and I would say in unexpected ways, Carl Wine develops his language throughout the piece in really unique and extraordinary means. So this is a piece that I've enjoyed playing for many years now. I would say in some ways it's a contemporary work that certainly has a lot of appeal for its harmonic language, its melodic language, its rhythm particularly, and how Mr. Vine is able to create these amazing washes of sound. These washes of sound always remind me of water, of the ocean, the tide, as it goes out and comes back. And at some moments, it almost feels like there's tidal waves as these waves are crashing, sonically speaking, onto the shore. I'll talk more about this piece in depth after the performance of it, but I think I'll perform this two movement work for you. It's about a 16 to 18 minute work, I would say, and so this is Carl Wine's Piano Sonata No.1, 1990. So that is Carl Wine's Piano Sonata No.1, 1990 is the year that it was written. This piece, again, to remind everyone, was dedicated to, was commissioned by the Sydney Dance Company of Australia. It was choreographed, and we'll get more into that soon. This piece was first recorded in 1991 by one of Mr. Vine's real mainstay pianists, Michael Kieran Harvey, a wonderful Australian pianist who's recorded quite a number of Carl Wine's music. First of all, I encourage you to check out more of Carl Vine, but also Michael Kieran Harvey is certainly a trusted source, as Mr. Carl Vine has known him for years, decades rather. So the two of them work closely on this, and for the Sydney Dance Company performance, the Michael Kieran Harvey was also the pianist for that. So to get a little bit into this piece, I would say that upon first listening, perhaps you like it, perhaps you're intrigued by it, perhaps there are things that you like, things that you don't like, and also perhaps you're just wondering, like, what the heck did I just hear? Because I would say in some ways this piece is sort of a melting pot of so many different styles. So you go from hearing music that sounds like straight out of contemporary jazz, melodic lines, whether it's you hear this wonderful, but then you also hear things that are all these kind of like sharp, a little bit gnarly type pianistic writing. So that, and in addition to sort of this type of computerized music, you're hearing so many different things that sometimes it's almost like you're watching a movie scene that's changing, sometimes frenetically. So this can be explained by Carl Vine, who himself admitted that he was influenced by many different genres of music and disciplines of music. So again, this is called Piano Sonata No.1. So first of all, Mr. Vine is looking back at the sonata form. Beethoven wrote sonatas, Haydn wrote sonatas, Mozart wrote sonatas. And now someone might say, well, how is this a sonata? It just sounds sort of seemingly random. While Beethoven's sonatas were much more structured, with 4 movements, 3 movements that were very clearly designated and had motives, melodies that you could hear time and time again. But I would say that the term sonata has transformed from being a piece that had a lot of rules associated with how to construct it to present day, where a sonata simply, in some ways, means a piece, like a collection, sort of. It could be a few movements, it could be 1 movement, it could be 2 movements, but today it's become more loose and lax in how the rules apply to a sonata. So to answer the question that many people ask me is, like, why is this a piano sonata and also Beethoven's stuff is a sonata? Like, they seem so different. It's because that the sonata has I wouldn't say evolved. It's changed in how people approach it. It's not necessarily better or worse than Beethoven's time. It's up to your opinion upon what you find most appealing about the sonata form. But today, the sonata is basically a term that unifies 2 different types of music. And in this sonata, Mr. Vine does have many different types of music that he wants to unify into one piece. Otherwise, sometimes when you call something a collection, not a sonata, people will play bits and pieces. When you call something a sonata, it unifies it, and it kind of, it still to this day urges you to play the entire thing as a performer. So, but in any case, there was influences certainly on Mr. Vine by his colleagues. One of the composers that Mr. Vine claimed really influenced him was the American composer Elliott Carter. Elliott Carter's first piano sonata, No.1, written in 1942-43 and revised in the 80s, is in 2 movements as well, and there's actually some shocking similarities. I'll show you, first of all, one that jumps to mind. So here we see two different passages of music. On the top, we see a passage from the Elliott Carter Sonata. On the bottom, we see a passage from the Carl Wein Piano Sonata. Now, at first glance, you're saying, what am I looking at? Well, there are certain techniques that both composers use that really had not been used much before. One technique is the idea that not all chords should be always played at the same length. So let's take a look at the top musical example. The very first bar of the musical example, we see a chord. It's a C minor chord. But while many composers would simply write this, Elliott Carter chooses to have the bottom half of this chord get choked out. So instead of we get, listen to the bottom part of the chord. The bottom part of the chord, it's not sustained, it's really short. Instead of, so that is actually something that I had not, at least in my studies, not seen really used to great extent until the Elliott Carter Sonata, and this is used all over the place. So listen to the similarity. So we've got Elliott Carter doing the short choking of the bottom. We've also got Mr. Wein doing, in his first bar, a short choking of the top. So again, instead of, it's... So that's one technique that Mr. Wein borrowed directly from Elliott Carter. Another is this idea of creating chords with interlocking notes. So let's take a look at the second bar of the top example, and we'll see we see one long note, a low B, but then we see some crazy-looking fast notes that basically. So we see this type of technique, this type of sound of a flurry of notes that result in a chord. What's interesting, though, is that this chord is being derived from the flurry of notes itself and not being reattacked. So instead of, it's, so that final chord is actually being constructed from the notes that precede it. And similarly, Mr. Wein borrows that exact same technique. If we look basically right below, we see, again, a really fast flurry of notes written by Mr. Wein, and it accomplishes the same effect. So we're playing this scale, but while I'm playing that scale, I'm actually holding notes so that when the scale's over, we hear a harmony. This. So this is all to say that these are two really nerdy, really precise examples of Carl Wein's influence from Elliott Carter. So people talk about influence a lot from different composers, but this type of technique is used all throughout Carl Wein's Sonata as well as Elliott Carter Sonata, and I thought it was important just to really show you exactly these different cells of thought that are being used. Because again, for my opinion, Elliott Carter really used these two different concepts most effectively, and was one of the first to use them. Another actual example, similarity actually, is in the second movement of the Carl Wein. We have music that sounds like this. Very interesting parallel music where both hands are doing the same thing in octave distance apart, and it creates this eerie kind of effect. And actually, I believe that it was quite influenced by another composer, the composer named Ginastera. And I'll show you a quick example of Ginastera's music. Let's take a listen. So that's an example from Hinestera's second movement of his Piano Sonata No. 1. A lot of Piano Sonata No. 1s that we're hearing today, and I think that you might agree that type of interesting textural type where the hands are separated and they're creating this almost techy computer type sound is quite similar. And again, Hinestera's work would have been many years before Carl Wein's sonata. So, and actually, why don't we just take a quick look at that passage in the Carl Wein? A lot of people say, like, what the heck is going on there? It just sounds like a bunch of, it could sound cool to your ears, but it's like, what the heck is going on? So let's take a look at this music. This is the beginning of the second movement of the Wein. So this is the opening of the second movement. We see Mr. Wein does write movement 2 at the top, and then he has a tempo marking, and he has what says in between the music leggero e legato, which means very soft. Well, sorry, it means light and smooth. And then the triple pianissimo means very, very soft. So, let me just play this for you a little bit slower one so that you can actually kind of hear what's going on. Because, funny enough, generally speaking, this is all in 4/4. There's some bars of 5/4, but it's all basically 16th notes. So. So on, so on. So, as you can see, despite the ultimate tempo being in reality, it's actually written in a more manageable way. Whenever I can't always necessarily show this score to my audiences when I'm performing it, but people always think it's like the craziest written out thing they've heard, or and in reality it's just straight 16th notes, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and this is something I thought would be interesting to share. But another thing I'd like to share is some of the extended techniques that occur in this sonata. Some of the techniques that really are unique to this sonata. They're used in other works. Again, Elliott Carter used some of these concepts as well. Again, why Mr. Wein's music was so influenced. So let me show you. Well, first of all, let's take a look at Mr. Wein himself. This is the wonderful composer Carl Wein. He's written symphonies, he's written television music, he's written dance music, traditional chamber music for various instruments. He admits that he is particularly thinking about music from a keyboard, a pianistic type way. He has said that he is not a good classical pianist, but he's a good contemporary pianist. In fact, the Elliott Carter Sonata No. 1 was a work that he said was his party piece. He always loved playing that for people. Now let's move on to the music. Let's take a look at the opening and closing of this piece, this entire sonata. The opening, we see some interesting markings, and we see at the closing another interesting thing. What's really fascinating is that, first of all, this piece does come full circle. We begin the piece, if you look at the highlighted box, we begin the piece with this sound. And then if you look at another highlighted box, which is 5-6 bars from the end, we have something very similar. So the beginning, ending. So the beginning extended is. And then the ending extended is. So we definitely see that Mr. Wein is using motives from earlier in the piece to yeah, really come full circle and have this piece ending in a sort of more mysterious and questioning type atmosphere. Now, a lot of people also always ask me, so the piano has 3 pedals. What does the middle pedal do? We never use it. And yes, it's we've got the right pedal, which sustains sound. So in other words, if I play a chord, it's short. If I use the right pedal, it's long. If I use the far left pedal, that basically colors the sound into a bit more softer palette. What it basically does is that when the hammer normally hits 3 strings of a note, the hammer is being shifted slightly to the right, so now it only hits 2 strings. So 2 versus 3 strings means that you're going to get a softer, more colorful, more impressionistic type sonic palette. So that's, a lot of people call the left pedal the soft pedal, but in reality it's more of a color pedal. Now, the middle pedal is always a mysterious one. Everyone says, what does that do? And do you even ever use it? Now, in Carl Wein's Sonata, we use it all the time. So let's take a look at the opening of this piece. Again, this highlighted portion. If you look at the bottom of that highlighted spot, you'll see something that says SOST dot. That stands for sostenuto. That stands for middle pedal, sostenuto pedal. So the sostenuto pedal basically will catch harmonies, hold them, but not muddy everything up. So for example, if I play the opening with only the right pedal, I'm going to get a very muddy type sound. I'm going to get this. It's rather muddy, I would say. Now if I use the middle pedal, I can catch this sound, this low bass sound, and then it's so much more clear, and I still have this sound existing. Normally, you cannot hold a sonic harmony and play lightly or staccato with the right pedal. So Mr. Vine wants harmonies to be held, and in fact, he even has, before the piece starts, he has these little weird-looking notes that are hollowed out, and he says, depress silently. So what that means is that literally what that means is that we're gonna play these notes completely silently. We're gonna push them all the way down into the key bed so that the hammer catches in the piano. You don't hear anything. Then I push down the middle pedal that catches these notes. These notes are now being inside the piano. They're being held up. The hammers are being exposed. And when I play them, they sustain because I've caught them with the middle pedal, and everything else is basically being nice and separated. So that's one way we can separate sound at the piano. Mr. Vine has said that with this piece he was really interested in sonority and resonance of the piano, and that's what he's constantly experimenting with, particularly even from the opening. And I find to great effect. There are many other examples in this piece where we will use the middle pedal to catch low harmonies and keep them as a drone, while there's a lot of stuff going on higher up. So it's really important to become more proficient with all the pedals, particularly for a piece like this one. So I hello M1 N1 Cloud, nice to see you again. Hello Pauline. I thanks everyone for joining. I noticed that there's a comment that said dancing to this would be interesting, and I agree. And that's why I have an example actually from the debut performance of this piece. This is from 1991 with Michael Kier and Harvey playing the piano and the Sydney Dance Company dancing to this music. This is an excerpt, so it jumps around slightly. It's a few minutes, but this is from the second movement of the sonata. So let's take a look at literally the choreography and what happened back in those early 90s with the Sydney Dance Company on choreographed the sonata. Again, what's important to note is that this is, I would say in many ways, this is very unique and really adventurous on the part of the Sydney Dance Company to commission such a avant-garde and really wild piece to be danced to. Let's take a look. This was the complete second movement of Carl Vine's Piano Sonata No.1. This was danced by the Sydney Dance Company back in 1990, and everyone everywhere that I've played this piece at has always been perplexed, confused. How does anyone dance to this music? Well, you just saw. By all accounts, when the piece was commissioned, they had asked Mr. Vine to write a music that gave no consideration to dance or really storytelling. Just basically, they just wanted him to write a piece that he loved, that he really just had for the piano as a concert piece, not as a dance piece. So sometimes when you write a piece for dance, you manipulate it in ways to make it easier to dance, but Mr. Vine wrote this piece first and foremost as a concert piano sonata, and then that was taken and choreographed. It's truly extraordinary and a really wonderful historical document to be able to view this live performance that was done way back in the 90s. So yeah, this is a piece that is, in my opinion, a treasure of the repertoire, and indeed many pianists do play it. Mr. Vine has been recorded extensively. His symphonic works, piano works, chamber music. So certainly he deserves so much credit for all of the work that he's done. And from my ears, I'll never forget when I first heard this piece. I was about 15 years old at the Aspen Music Festival. I remember hearing this piece performed, and from that moment I was hooked by it, and I knew I had to learn it. So I know for me, it's been such an important part of my musical journey. Predominantly because from my ears, it combines two of my favorite loves, which is jazz music and classical music in unexpected ways. Thank you everyone for joining today's presentation on Carl Vine's Piano Sonata No.1. It's a piece that I truly love, and certainly I will be playing it, much more in the future as always, sharing his music with audiences. So it was a treat to be able to, again, share this music with you. I'd like to thank Alex and Cindy of InPulse Creatives, as always, for hosting the Close Encounters series. And I'm excited to be presenting some more wonderful programs and collaborations in the coming months. So stay tuned. And I hope everyone has a great day or evening, wherever you might be in the world. See you next time.